Alton Glenn Miller was a huge name in the American music industry in the 1930s and 40s. Miller was a trombonist, arranger, and composer who worked on projects with names such as Benny Goodman and Bing Crosby. After establishing himself in the industry, Miller went on to form his own band, though it would get lost in the mix of other bands who played a similar style with a similar sound. Feeling discouraged, Miller returned to New York in 1938, where he worked on developing a new sound. Just 1 year later, in 1939, Glenn Miller would be a household name, and Time magazine would write of him, "Of the 12 to 24 discs in each of today's 300,000 U.S. jukeboxes, from 2 to 6 are usually Glenn Miller's." In 1941, Miller's band appeared in the first of 2 major motion pictures. The original deal involved a third film, though America's involvement in World War II would change Miller's future. In 1942, Miller earned his first gold record for Chattanooga Choo Choo. In addition to earning critical and popular acclaim for his work, Miller also earned the respect and admiration of other musical stars of the time. Frank Sinatra was a fan of Miller's orchestra, and Louis Armstrong was so impressed and drawn to the sound that he took Miller's music out with him on tour. Later, in 1942, Miller made the choice to join up with the American war effort, walking away from a career that earned him $15,000 to $20,000 a week, which in today's money would be $230,000 to $300,000. Miller, 38 at the time, was too old to be drafted, and so he attempted to enlist in the Navy, but they declined. Later, Miller would write to a brigadier general where he requested to be brought into the United States Army, where he hoped to take over and lead the Army Band, among other activities. On September 27th, Miller played his last civilian gig. Life in the Army went well for Miller, who rose to the rank of Major by 1944. He wanted to change things up and bring a more modernized sound to the Army Band, and while this was met with resistance from the old guard, his celebrity and support from others helped push through his plans. In the summer of '44, Miller brought a 50-piece Army band to England, where they would perform 800 concerts. Also, while in England, Miller and his band recorded a series of records which would be used as pro-US propaganda during the war. Unfortunately, Miller would never have the opportunity to see how those recordings were used. On December 15, 1944, Miller was scheduled to fly into Paris. Flying in a single-engine UC-64 Norseman, Miller was planning to make arrangements to move his band to France. Miller, though, never arrived in France, and his plane vanished while flying over the English Channel. While searches for Miller failed to turn up any trace of the musician or his plane, the news about his disappearance was kept from the public for 9 days until December 24th, when Miller failed to appear as conductor for a holiday show. Initially, it was believed that the most likely answer would involve Miller's plane being shot down by Axis forces, or perhaps that weather played a role, though several conspiracy theories would arise over the years. Fred Shaw, a navigator for the Royal Air Force, reported that the night Miller's plane vanished, several RAF bombers were forced to turn back due to weather and drop their bombs over the English Channel. Shaw claimed that he witnessed the bombs hitting a plane, which closely resembled the one Miller flew off in earlier that night. Some believe that Miller did make it to Paris, and that after going on an alcohol-fueled tear through the city, he walked into a bordello where he later died as the result of a heart attack. Supporters of that theory believe that the military went out of their way to cover up the incident to protect both Miller's reputation and that of the United States Army. Others have argued that Miller may have been operating as a spy for the Allied forces and that this was known to the enemy. In connection with this theory, there has long been a rumor that Dwight Eisenhower, commander of the Allied forces at the time, sent Miller into Germany on a diplomatic mission to attempt to negotiate a German surrender. Many believe that Miller was arrested and executed during this mission, though there has never been anything to prove it ever happened. Ultimately, neither the wreckage of the plane nor any bodies were ever recovered, and so the fate of Glenn Miller remains an enduring mystery that captures the attention of researchers to this day. At 25 years old, Jean Elizabeth Spangler got involved in Hollywood. As a dancer and model turned actress, she appeared as a dancer in several uncredited roles. Spangler hoped that her uncredited parts would provide her with an opportunity to move into the spotlight, taking on larger roles and beginning the process of becoming a known actress, but this would never materialize. 2 years earlier, Spangler had divorced her husband of 4 years, Dexter Benner, and ultimately won full custody of their daughter, Christine. Operating as a single mother while trying to grow a career in 1940s Hollywood was no easy task. On Friday, October 7, 1949, Spangler left her then 5-year-old daughter with her sister-in-law, Sophie. According to Sophie, Spangler explained that she was meeting with her ex-husband to discuss a late child support payment, and afterwards, she would be shooting a film, but it would likely finish after a few hours. 2 hours later, Spangler called Sophie and explained that the shoot was running long and she likely wouldn't be home until the morning. Spangler talked to her daughter, though this would be the last time anyone would hear from Jean Spangler. When Spangler failed to arrive the next morning, Sophie went and filed a missing persons report. Investigators first contacted the studio to find out where the night shoot was taking place, but it was at this time they discovered that Spangler was not scheduled to shoot any film the night she disappeared. A clerk working at a farmer's market not far from Spangler's home told authorities that she had seen the actress the previous evening at approximately 6 p.m., and that Spangler appeared to be killing time as though she was waiting for someone. This was the last confirmed sighting of Jean Spangler. Police spoke to Dexter Benner about his scheduled meeting with Spangler the previous night, but Benner claimed not to have had any plans to meet Spangler and that he hadn't seen his ex-wife for several weeks. Benner's new wife corroborated his story and provided support for his alibi. It wouldn't be until the following day, October 9th, that police would get their first and only lead in the case. Spangler's purse was found near the entrance to Griffith Park in Los Angeles, approximately 5.5 miles from her home. 2 straps on the purse were torn, indicating that someone had struggled with Spangler and forcibly pulled her purse free. More than 150 people, volunteers and police alike, conducted a massive search of the park, but nothing more was found and no trace of Spangler was discovered. There was no money in the purse, though Sophie had told police that Spangler didn't have any money when she'd left the home, and so they felt robbery was not a valid cause. What they did find in the purse, though, would become a mysterious clue. A note addressed to a man named Kirk was found and reads as follows: "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while mother is away." Spangler's mother was visiting family in Kentucky at the time. Police could not locate the man named Kirk, though Spangler's mother confirmed a man named Kirk had picked her daughter up for a few dates, but she'd never actually seen him. No Dr. Scott could be located that had Spangler as a patient, and no one had any idea of who the doctor may have been, nor why Spangler would have been going to see him. Spangler has never been found, though over the years several rumors have emerged. Shortly before her disappearance, Spangler completed filming for the movie Young Man with a Horn, starring Kirk Douglas. Douglas spoke to police on 2 separate occasions, first denying that he had known Spangler at all, and later admitting that he had spoken with her, but he claimed to have never seen her outside of work. Could he be the elusive Kirk from the note? Following her disappearance, Spangler's ex-husband was awarded custody of their daughter, and many began to wonder if he could have been involved in her disappearance. In the years after her disappearance, Spangler's mother battled Benner in court for visitation with her granddaughter, which Benner denied against a court order, and he later fled the state to avoid prosecution. Several of Spangler's friends told police that she was pregnant when she disappeared, leading many to wonder if Dr. Scott may have been an alias used by a doctor performing abortions, which were illegal at the time. Police began to wonder if Spangler could have been involved in a botched abortion that led to her death. Rumors were rampant, with some connecting Spangler to the mafia due to her previous employment at a club owned by mob associates. Others speculated that Spangler may have been yet another female victim murdered at the hands of the man who was responsible for the famous Black Dahlia. Unconfirmed sightings of Spangler were reported over the years, though Spangler herself has never been located. Richard James Edwards rose to prominence as the lyricist of the band Manic Street Preachers, for whom he also played rhythm guitar. Born and raised in Wales, Edwards began his association with the band while working as a roadie. While Edwards' skill as a musician has been debated over the years, there's no denying that his lyrics played a massive role in the band's success. The band's third album, The Holy Bible, was allegedly written predominantly by Edwards. 3 tracks on the band's next album, Everything Must Go, are credited solely to Edwards, while 2 other songs list him as a co-writer. The band later acknowledged that while Edwards didn't have a firm grasp of music, he was a leading force in the direction the band would go in terms of their sound. Edwards suffered from depression and was fairly open about this in many interviews. He also self-harmed by cutting himself, as well as putting cigarettes out on his own body. In one notorious interview, Edwards and the band were accused of being fake and putting on an act. Edwards responded by carving the words "for real" into his arm with a razor blade. This cut would require 18 stitches to close. Edwards' last appearance with the band took place on December 21, 1994 at the London Astoria. 3 months later, he would mysteriously vanish. On February 1, 1995, Edwards was set to fly to the United States for a promotional tour. 2 weeks later, on Valentine's Day, his car was found abandoned not far from the Severn Bridge, a site known for several suicides when victims would leap from the bridge. Police began to believe Edwards may have taken his own life, though friends would argue that he would never have done that. In several interviews, Edwards himself had commented about it, stating that he would not consider suicide a viable option, regardless of his depression. Reports later surfaced of sightings of Edwards in the weeks after his alleged death, and it was revealed that in the 2 weeks leading up to his disappearance, Edwards had been withdrawing money from his bank account every day, totaling £2,800, leading many to wonder if it was possible that he could have been planning to disappear. Many people close to Edwards argued that investigators didn't commit much time or effort to the search, and that once the vehicle was found, they resigned themselves to the idea of suicide and did not continue looking for Edwards. While his family had the option to have Edwards declared legally dead in 2002, they waited an additional 6 years, finally having him declared dead in 2008. What became of Edwards has been highly debated, with some believing the brilliant but troubled musician may have succumbed to his depression and taken his own life, while others still believe he fled from the spotlight and may be alive today, living an anonymous life. Several books and articles have been written about Edwards' disappearance, with one in 2019 claiming to provide new evidence to support the idea that Edwards staged his own disappearance. If you've enjoyed this episode of Trace Evidence Quick Cuts, please like and subscribe. To listen to additional episodes of Quick Cuts, click here.